Arlington Toyota wants to know what drives you. Let's start with having 500 Toyotas available. Plus, you get a lifetime warranty and 30 days to love your new purchase or exchange it. What drives you is what we do. Shop arlingtontoyota.com today.
Hey, welcome into this episode of The Book of Bo, brought to you by Arlington Toyota. Get 30 days to love your purchase or exchange it. Shop arlingtontoyota.com.
Jacksonville, are you sitting down?
We have just learned that Touchdown Jacksonville says that it has been confirmed that Jacksonville has become the 30th NFL franchise. Holy we got it.
We need somebody to pinch us.
The Jacksonville Jaguars have selected tackle, Southern California, Tony Boselli.
And certainly with the Jacksonville Jaguars, will be looked to be that left tackle that they can put out there for maybe 12 to 14 years, and maybe half of that time, Chris, he'll be in the Pro Bowl.
Most NFL dreams are written in the sand. Here today, gone tomorrow. There are 362 members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. For context, that's out of more than 26,000 men who have played in the National Football League. Even the prettiest of seashells, the most pristine sea glass, run the risk of being washed away, never truly given the chance to shine. Even those with all the hype, the draft hoopla, Mel Kiper singing their praises, especially in this town. But the big man at the beach, Jacksonville, Big Bo, that right there is the story of a man that rode the biggest waves, came crashing down, drifted off to sea, and ultimately returning ashore, right where he was always meant to be.
This is home. Like, this is where we belong. This is our people. I love Jacksonville. Forget about taking the emotion away, and yes, it didn't end the way I wanted with the Jaguars, but I love this place. I love Jacksonville.
At least some of you are here to see if Tony would talk on the record about how things ended during his playing days with the hometown Jags. The injuries, being drafted by the rival Houston Texans in the expansion draft, and we'll get to that. Then there's some of you that want to see if Tony or his buddies will spill any tea about Bruce Smith. We'll get to that too. At least a handful of you are still grasping for any sort of Boselli burger reference. Don't worry, that's here too. After all, this isn't a short story or a tall tale. This is the Book of Bo. I'm Dan Hicken.
Well, let's see. Tony's the oldest, so if you know about older children, the oldest child, he's definitely the oldest child. In control, I'm it, I get everything first, you get everything last.
That's Big Bo's mom, Candy. Like any good book, we got to start from the beginning. And Candy, or as her 12 grandchildren now call her, Moo Moo, has been here from the start.
So from the time little Tony could talk, he had a football in his hands, and I want to be a football. Me, football. Yes, that's great. I'm going to play football when I grow up. Yes, that's great, but you have to go to school and get an education, and this is like 4 or 5 years old.
Little Tony had a football for the same reason he was called Little Tony. That's his dad, Big Tony, Don Anthony Boselli Sr.
Like, when you say involved parent today, you think of like this overbearing kind of helicopter parent, like yelling at coaches or getting in the coach's business. He was the opposite of that, but very involved from the standpoint, he was active. Most days when he got home from work, we did something. We played catch, we played football, we played one-on-one basketball. We went to the lake because we had a boat, and we'd go water skiing in the summer. after work. So there was always something going on, and family was really important.
It's not like Big Tony didn't include Jennifer and Michael, Tony's 2 younger siblings, in all the fun. It was a whole family affair. Big Tony's brother, Bud, and his 12 kids lived up the road. All the Boselli kids played sports, all the Boselli kids enjoyed the outdoors, and all the Boselli kids worked in the family business. That would be McDonald's. Uncle Bud had answered a blind ad in the newspaper in the early 1970s, gone to Hamburger U, and opened a chain of McDonald's restaurants. That's what brought the California-born Boselli clan to Colorado in the first place. Sadly, no, they didn't have any Boselli burgers back then.
It was a very loving family, big family, always together. So Tony and his dad were very close. Tony Sr. lost his dad when he was 8, and his brother, who's 22 years older, kind of took over the role of dad. And so that was really important for Tony Sr. To be, a really good dad.
And little Tony was the apple of Big Tony's eye. Tall, athletic, competitive like his old man. Big Tony and Moo Moo signed little Tony up for Pop Warner, even though he wasn't old enough. He was, of course, big enough, so no one batted an eye. But the game truly changed when little Tony attended the Mile High football camp for the first time.
And at age 9, it was a sleepover camp. It was the first time I went to a camp, slept over. It was like 3 or 4 nights, and it was full pads, and you learned the game of football. And I loved it.
Not only did Mile High lay the foundation for Tony's career on the field, it was at the same camp that he first met some of his future best friends and teammates. He learned from the likes of Vinny Testaverde and Craig Morton, not to mention the camp's founder and director, legendary high school football coach Sam Pagano. In Colorado football folklore, Sam's more famous than his sons, former NFL head coach Chuck Pagano and his brother, longtime NFL defensive coordinator John.
And Sam Pagano was a guy who I had cousins who played for him, and so I'd go to the games as a young guy. I started being a water boy when I was young, and so probably my first goal was to play at Fairview for Sam Pagano.
But Vinny Testaverde was that summer. And I'm thinking, here's this Tony, big strapping Italian kid, and his dad came to me and said, could he go to the quarterback clinic? I said, sure, yeah, he could go to the clinic. And I was busy. I watched him a little bit, but I think in Tony's eyes or his dad's eyes, Vinny Testaverde, big, tall Italian kid, strong arm. And I think I watched him a little bit, but be honest, very little, being running the whole camp. And I just told him, I said, when you come, you're going to be a left tackle.
Tony wasn't even zoned for Fairview High School. Didn't matter. If he had to write an appeal letter, he wrote the appeal letter. If he had to live with Uncle Bud, he'd live with Uncle Bud. He would be wearing the Fairview Knights red and white. Little Tony and Big Tony were willing to do whatever it took. As for what position he'd play, well, Tony was still dead set on playing quarterback. He wasn't making varsity as a quarterback, not as a sophomore at least.
Funny story is I was actually the water boy as a sophomore for the first 6 games of the year on varsity. So I'd play sophomore. We play on, I think it was Thursday night, yeah. And then I would get on the bus with the varsity. All my friends would get their pads and stuff, and I'd have the water, and I'd go out and carry the water.
He was really ticked because he didn't make varsity, and which I think was the best thing his high school coach, Sam Pagano, could have ever done for him, because he thought he was big man on campus, but he was a little lazy and not really, doing that well on the football field. And Sam said, well, you're going to be on JV.
Coach Pagano let Tony briefly moonlight as a tight end, but then he tried to reason with Tony again.
I think the first day he might have taken a snap. He was with the sophomores, and I went down and said, Tony, you're going to be a left tackle, and you'll do well. And I kind of said, that was in the 80s. I said, and you'll make $1 million someday.
I distinctly remember the day that Coach Pagano grabbed him, and it was, it was one-on-one, but everyone was aware.
That's Joe Barry. He's currently the Packers defensive coordinator, but he has the rare distinction of having played with Tony Boselli in high school and college.
Tony being, what he thought was a quarterback, he was like, what, you're going to put me at left tackle? And, you know, Sam said something along the lines, he said, kid, trust me, for your future, this is going to be the best thing for you. And it obviously was.
Hope you're enjoying this episode of The Book of Bo, brought to you by Arlington Toyota. Get 30 days to love your purchase or exchange it. Shop arlingtontoyota.com. Now back to The Book of Bo.
Tony eventually got promoted that sophomore season from eternal water boy to star reserve, playing a whopping total of 7 snaps on varsity, and that was in a 60-point blowout playoff game. Hey, it was enough to earn a varsity letter, and Fairview avenged an earlier season loss against rival Cherry Creek en route to its 3rd state title in program history. Tony had accepted he probably wasn't going to be a quarterback, but an offensive lineman? One day making $1 million?
If you'd asked me as a sophomore, am I going to go play Division I football? I've been like, boy, that'd be great, but I can't even make the varsity team of the high school. And so I just worked hard. You know, it was important to me. Like, I wanted to start my junior year. And so I remember at lunch breaks, I'd go lift weights. You know, I really started doing the things that needed to be done to have success.
I saw that from my senior year when Tony was a junior. It did not take long to see that, oh my God, this kid's gonna be a superstar, you know, and he was still, you know, compared to, you know, how much weight he gained and how big he got, you know, he still at that time, shoot, I bet Tony's junior year, he only weighed 215 pounds, but you could tell that he was a specimen and just gonna be a phenomenal player.
Head down, nose to the grindstone, no excuses, play it close to the vest. That's just how Tony rolled, both on and off the field. You see, Big Tony and Moo Moo divorced just before Tony got to high school.
He's probably, out of all 3 kids, probably the most closed-chested, you know, kind of keeps everything to himself. And, I mean, it was hard on all the kids in a different way because of their ages. But, you know, his dad and I, we worked really hard. The first time we had to be in an activity as a divorced family for school, and the kids walked in, they looked at his table, they looked at my table, and they're like, I don't know what table to go to. And I went, okay, that's never happening again. So I called Tony that night and I said, you know, no matter how I feel about you, you feel about me. We have these 3 beautiful children, and the looks on their face tonight was horrifying. Makes me tear up. So from that point forward, we did everything together, every activity we sat together. When he became engaged to Carla, and when she was part, you know, of going to be his new life, we all sat together. That was hard on her in the beginning, but, you know, it was like, this is how it has to be because the kids don't need to choose. And so worked out pretty good, you know, 33 years later. And Tony actually, at a, where was that? Oh, my Bud's oldest daughter died of ALS when she was 42. She was 2 years younger than I am. And we went for the funeral, and then Tony was taking us back to the airport, and Tony Jr. said to his dad, to me, he goes, you know, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate what you guys did. You know, that you could do, we can still do this together, and it works. So, sorry. Anyway, divorce is never fun. But, you know, we both went our ways. I've been married now for 32 years. Carla and his dad were married for a little longer than that because they got married before we did. So, you know, we've been one family. And that, I think, has been the most important thing for the kids. You know, again, divorce is never easy on anybody. But you know, we made it work, and I really appreciate that about Tony Sr.
Team Boselli, the original version. Perhaps that's part of why Tony was such a great teammate on the field throughout his career. He had the ultimate teammates and the ultimate team back at home. a team that was all in on little Tony's football dream, especially as it picked up steam during his junior season. Despite having perhaps a more talented roster, Fairview didn't make it back to the state title game, but the word was out on the college recruitment front. Tony Boselli Jr. wasn't just some wannabe quarterback. He was a bona fide college prospect.
So I didn't want to stay home. It was really going into that when recruiting started, it was probably between USC and Notre Dame. Notre Dame made it clear they didn't want me.
While Moo pushed Stanford with its academic rigor, it was love at first sight for little Tony and the USC campus and the cast of characters he found on his official visit.
First of all, it was beautiful weather. It was snowing in Colorado. It was like 75 degrees in LA. You walk into Heritage Hall, the football facility, you see the Heisman trophies, the history. Some of the greatest players ever played the game of football played at USC. They were just finishing off the 3 straight years of going to the Rose Bowl. I was just, like, it was such an easy decision for me. Probably didn't hurt that they walked me by the pool and there was some very attractive co-eds. As a 17-year-old young man, that doesn't, I don't know if they did it on purpose or not, but it worked. And thankfully I found one of them to be my wife. So in the big scheme of things, it was right where I was supposed to be.
You know it, but before he could hit the beach and the toga parties, Tony still had one more season to play for Coach Pagano in Fairview.
As I went on to college, when Tony became a senior, he definitely, you know, the personality and who Tony is now, he really became that his senior year.
We were a run team and we didn't throw the ball a lot, so he was a great run blocker. And he was very successful at Fairview doing that.
But Coach Pagano knew that, given the right coaching at USC, little Tony was about to become a whole lot more than a space eater. He was truly about to become Big Bo. Coming up.
From the time he became a starter at USC, even when, you know, his redshirt freshman year, he was a leader and an ass kicker from day one.
I'll never forget this. He's sitting to my left. He stands up and introduces himself, and he's 6'7", like 250. And I'm like, tight end, you know? Right. And he's like offensive tackle, and I'm kind of like, who's this skinny dork?
They ended up driving me to the local Save-On at the time, and there was Tony on the front of this Pac-10 magazine. It's Tony Boselli and Jonathan Ogden, Tony for USC and Jonathan Ogden for UCLA. And I was like, no way. Oh my gosh.
Hope you enjoyed this latest episode of The Book of Bo, brought to you by Arlington Toyota. Get 30 days to love your purchase or exchange it. Shop arlingtontoyota.com.